Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre el presente de subjuntivo. I'm going to put this PowerPoint for you guys so you can look at it, but I just wanted to go through a couple of the important slides. Okay, so basically here we're talking about how do we form the present subjunctive. And one thing that we need to make sure that we understand is that we do follow the same things, the same patterns that we've been seeing. So you take off the AR, ER, IR ending, you're left with the stem. If it's an AR verb, you add es, hemos, en, the E. If it's an ER, IR ending, you add a, as, a, amos, an. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the formation. How do we form it? What do we do? So the first thing that you're going to do is write the verb in the yo form of the present indicative tense. And I have a couple of examples here. We have hablar and tener. So hablar in the yo form is hablo. And we basically take off this O and we're left with the stem H-A-B-L, hable. And since it's an AR verb, it changes to E, and that's how we get the formation of the subjunctive here. Yo hable, tú hables, él hable, nosotros hablemos y ellos hablen. Next, we have an example of the verb tener, which in the present tense is, in the present indicative, it's conjugated as tengo. And again, we take off the O ending, and that's how we get here, tenga, tengas, tenga, tengamos, tengan. It is an ER verb, so that's why it gets changed to A. So if you guys have any problems with forming a verb, you can always look up the conjugation. You'll just type in conjugation, subjunctive, and whatever the verb might be, so that you can understand a little bit better that specific conjugation. But basically, all of the formations of the verbs in subjunctive are going to follow this pattern, except for a few of the irregulars that we're going to be discussing. Okay, and here this is basically when to use the subjunctive, how to differentiate it from the indicative. And the subjunctive can be used for expressing wishes, emotions, impersonal expressions, recommendations, doubts, and ojalá. And ojalá is basically just that, like I wish, I hope. The literal translation, I believe, is along the lines of may God grant that, right? May it be that whatever happens. Good. Okay, so I will go through these. Here are some of the irregular forms. Okay, and these are the 6 verbs that are very irregular, pretty much we're going to look at some others, but these are the ones that are completely irregular. Dar, estar, haber, ir, saber, and ser. And you guys have the conjugations here. Please note in 1 and 2 that dar and estar do have accent marks in them, while the rest of them do not. Okay, so make sure to take note of that. Also note that the yo form and the él, ella, usted form is basically going to be the same in all of these, and how you differentiate them is based on the context. Okay, we also do have the cargar and zar verbs. We talked about these a little bit last week when we were covering preterite and imperfect. Remember that for the preterite and imperfect, you do have the accent mark on the E, right, in all of these for the preterite yo form. Oh, excuse me. However, in the subjunctive, as you can see, there's going to be no accent marks. For the yo form, only going to be in the vosotros form. Good. Okay, so now we have an activity, and the prompt says to us, your friend is coming to Tucson for a visit. Use the following list of verbs to write 6 wishes or recommendations for him or her during their visit. So the verbs that we have are desear, esperar, preferir, querer, aconsejar, sugerir, recomendar, and pedir. Okay, so basically you're going to pick from this list a couple of verbs that you want to use to write out some recommendations for your friend or wishes for them. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a few minutes to write 1 or 2, and then we'll go over the next slide, which has some examples already written out. So go ahead and take a few minutes to try to write a sentence in the subjunctive for a recommendation or wish for your friend. Okay, so here's some practice that I have already written out, and we need to kind of go through this because I want to make sure that you guys understand how to form the subjunctive, not just the conjugation of the verb, but also how to use it in a sentence. Okay, so here we have the first example. Espero que te diviertas durante tu visita. Right? I hope that you enjoy yourself during your visit. And here what we can see is at first we have espero. No? Espero. And this comes from the yo form in present indicative. And then we have our que. So this is basically our formula, right? How to form it. Present indicative. And then we have the que, kind of like as a conjunction. Te diviertas. Now this is the yo form. This is the tu form. Te diviertas. And this is going to be what's in the subjunctive right here. Diviertas. The original verb is divertir. And it's an IR verb. That's why it gets changed to an A here. And then we just have the remaining sentence to kind of give us the meaning, the clarification of the sentence. When do you want me to have fun? Oh, during my visit. Okay. So that's kind of our formula. Present indicative, our que, and then present subjunctive. Also notice that there are two different grammatical persons or subjects in the sentence, okay? So here we have espero, which is in the yo form, and te diviertas, which is in the tu form. And we're going to be seeing this throughout the rest of the different examples that we have here. All right? So aconsejo is like is advice, right? So you're giving them some advice about something. You're giving them a comment about what they should do, right? Aconsejo is in the yo form. Te means I'm giving this advice to you. So I am telling you, or I suggest to you, that you go to the San Agustin market. Okay? Vayas is the verb ir, and it's an irregular form. This is in the subjunctive. This is in the indicative, right? The present indicative in the yo. The same thing here. Recomiendo, I recommend, que comas los hot dogs sonorenses. I recommend that you eat, comas. Okay. Yo, tú, comer is the original verb. That's why it changes to a. Sonoran hot dogs. I recommend that you try Sonoran hot dogs. You eat Sonoran hot dogs. Sugiero, I suggest, que visites. I suggest, yo form, que visitar in the tu form. That's an AR verb. That's why it gets the ES. Que visites el Monte Limón. I suggest that you visit Mount Lemon. Okay, so those are some practice things. So just make sure that you write down your own practice ones so that you guys can get a little bit more background in understanding the subjunctive, a little bit more practice with the verb tense. Good. So this just kind of goes into a little bit more detail and tells us more that to use the subjunctive, you do need to have that change in subject that we were seeing before. Okay, and if there's no change in subject, you don't have to conjugate the verb. You just use the infinitive form. So let's look at these two examples here. So prefiero here in both in red is the yo present indicative. Okay, so it's the yo form in present indicative. And then we have the que, as we saw before, but notice that there's no que here. And here we have escuches, which is in the tu form, the tu, okay? The verb escuchar, it's an AR verb, that's why it changes to E. Prefiero que escuches música clásica para estudiar. And as it tells us here, they're different subjects. Yo and tú. That's why we have this K here. I want you. I prefer that you listen to classical music when you study. Okay? Whereas here, prefiero escuchar música electrónica para estudiar. There's just one subject, and that's yo, right? And that's why this does not need to be conjugated, because there's not another subject or like a grammatical person that you would have to conjugate it for. Okay, so when it's just the identical subject, you don't have to use the subjunctive. But here, since we have different subjects, I'm saying I want you to listen to classical music instead of saying I want, I prefer myself, right, to listen to classical music, where there's no change. So like I said, I'll go through and put this video as well as the PowerPoint up for you guys so you can look through different verbs that are typically used with the subjunctive. Okay, here's another example of the subjunctive in use. So the prompt says, the professor ate street tacos and now I'm sick, right? I ate the street tacos, so I got sick. What do you recommend to me? Look here to make sure that we understand this. This le is referring to the professor, because typically in a school situation, there's more formality. So you would use the él, ella, usted form, right? You would use usted instead of tú to kind of indicate that formality, right? So, profesora, le recomiendo que vaya al doctor. Profesora, I recommend to you, usted, that you go to the doctor. Profesora, le recomiendo que descanse mucho. Profesora, I recommend to you that you rest a lot, right? Get a lot of rest. Okay, so there's some different examples of how to use the subjunctive. Okay, here it just goes through more, kind of trying to show this difference, the same thing that we saw before. If there's no change in subject, you use the infinitive. Okay, es una lástima que debas retrasar tu viaje a la Ciudad de México. Right? And here we're using an impersonal expression because it's not referring to a person. It's just saying it's a shame that you have to push back your trip to Mexico City. And then here in the next one it says, es estupendo ir de vacaciones a la Ciudad de México. It's wonderful, marvelous, right? Going to vacation to Mexico City. And there we see that there's no change in subject, right? That's why we use the ir, and it's not conjugated, as opposed to the first one where we see debas is in the tú form, showing that change in subject. Okay. Also, we're talking about doubt, that we use the subjunctive when there's a doubt. Okay. In the first example, it says, no creo que Malena vaya a la fiesta. That's basically saying, I don't think that Malena is going to go to the fiesta. Whereas in the second one, creo que Malena va a la fiesta. I think she is going. I believe that Malena is going to go to this party. So vaya in the first example is ir in the subjunctive, and in the second example it is in the indicative. Okay, it's the same verb, ir. And when we have doubt, we use the subjunctive. When there's no doubt, we use the indicative. Okay, and this kind of gives you a list to show the differences between the two. When do you use subjunctive? That implies doubt, and here's the list of verbs. Whereas when do you use indicative, that implies there's no doubt. Okay, other expressions that you typically see with subjunctive are the following. And like I said, I will post that video for you guys. Lastly, we have here the horoscope, right, for the different types of signs. So I'll give you guys some time to complete this. We do have the answers on the next slide. So remember that you're going to have to be conjugating these verbs in the subjunctive in the tú form, because they all are in tú. They're going to be in the you informal or familiar form. So go ahead and go through. No te comprometer en lo que no puedes y no escuchar consejos ajenos. Te voy a recomendar que colocar en la puerta de tu casa un vasito de huevo. Te recomiendo que te alejar de las amistades que tú sabes no son favorables. Es importante que mirar hacia adelante y los días domingo encender una vela de color naranja para tu protección. Yo te sugeriría que te preparar porque lo que viene es candela. Okay, and the answers are going to be here. que comprometas, escuches, coloques, alejes, mires, enciendas y